rather than it's charging my phone. Oh. That's like PO. Is this your XD campus? I have and that's Super 35. So that's stuff. You know, you aren't focused and all that shit's out of focus. But just say that you change classes. I just run that way. What I do is I just stop at the weekend. I had that lens, 11 to 16.
Have you heard of space internet? 4,000 small satellites orbiting Earth, beaming down high-speed broadband to the most remote nooks on the planet, reaching billions. Spacex, Virgin Galactic, Boeing, and Airbus are all racing to make space internet a reality. This scheme depends on CubeSats, low-cost, bite-sized satellites that many view as the future of telecommunications and deep space exploration. But these CubeSats have a big problem. Conventional rockets with their huge chemical fuel tanks are too large and too powerful for CubeSats, which are as tiny as Rubik's Cubes or small printers. It'd be like strapping your bicycle to a monster truck. So CubeSats are currently built without propulsion and can't be controlled once in orbit. This restricts CubeSats to lower orbits, safe from collisions with normal satellites. After a few months, the CubeSats fall back to Earth. What CubeSats need to stay in space are mini boosters, and scientists are racing to build them. And if you look inside this chamber, we can show you one, capable of blasting them deep into the cosmos.
I grew up in Mexico, and I was very young. I watched Carl Sagan's Cosmos, as probably every other child in my generation.
The cosmos is also within us. We're made of star stuff. We are a way for the cosmos to know itself.
That inspired me to study the stars, to work on things that leave the Earth.
Paul Lozano is the director of the Space Propulsion Lab at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He's found a solution to the CubeSat problem, and the idea of fueling his mini rocket is simpler than you might think.
What we can do is to rub the plastic on any fabric, really, and you can put a little bit of liquid on your finger and then get it close, and you will see the liquid flying, producing a little cone and then flying to the plastic.
That's static electricity, and it's not just tugging at the droplet. Look more closely and you'll see the static creates a spray of charged molecules called ions. Lozano's tiny rockets, which are the size of quarters, generate these ion sprays.
They don't produce a lot of force, so it's always less than the weight of a mosquito.
This may sound wimpy, but even a small action creates a reaction in the frictionless vacuum of outer space. Move ions in one direction, and a CubeSat will move uber fast in the other.
The best chemical rocket will produce an exhaust of particles that move at about 4,000 meters per second. And an ion engine can go much higher. It can reach 40,000, 50,000, or even more meters per second.
Up to 111,000 miles per hour. More than enough to stay in orbit around Earth, or even blast off to Mars. Lozano's ion engines look like computer microchips. They contain a grid of 500 needles, each a solar-powered, custom-built nozzle for spewing ions.
My name is Catherine Miller. I am a second-year PhD student here. I'm also a NASA Space Technology Research Fellow. They're electrochemically etched and chemically roughened to make the needle tip. It's extremely, extremely sharp. And so from there you can dip the ionic liquid onto the surface and produce an ion beam that way.
Latch on a fuel tank the size of a sugar cube and you're almost ready for liftoff.
What we have in here is a relatively big vacuum. You can see what we have right now is a little satellite that is actually magnetically levitated. We have tiny little thrusters in there that can move the satellite and rotate it around. And we can investigate then how the thrusters behave, how do they affect the motion of the satellite while the vacuum chamber is closed.
Ion engines aren't new. NASA's Dawn mission, which hopped its way to the asteroid Ceres, would have been impossible without its high-velocity ion engine. But the Dawn mission cost $500 million. Commercial CubeSats can cost as little as $100,000, and this price is dropping. Even children are building CubeSats at their elementary schools. Sure, you're thinking an individual CubeSat can't perform as many operations as a big mission satellite, but there is strength in numbers.
Instead of, going to an asteroid every 5-10 years the traditional way, release a fleet of these tiny little CubeSats and visit 100 asteroids.
Doing so could prevent Armageddon.
Some of these asteroids, especially the very small ones, they have the potential to collide with the Earth. They won't kill the Earth, but they can kill a city.
By launching a fleet of CubeSats, scientists could learn the chemical compositions of these city killers. That could be key to destroying them. An asteroid made of silicon would be much tougher to stop than one made of iron. Meanwhile, closer to home, Lozano's ion engines could install CubeSats into shiftable orbits for a space internet. So from a truly worldwide web to stopping asteroids, Lozano's mini-thrusters hope to carry CubeSats to infinity and beyond. Until next time, I'm Sikon Akpan, and this is Science Scope from the PBS NewsHour.
Finally, to our NewsHour share, something that caught our eye that may be of interest to you as well. The Smithsonian Institution's collection is 150 million objects strong. But when the time comes to take those priceless pieces on the road, how do they keep them safe? The NewsHour's Julia Griffin got a behind-the-scenes look at their latest tour.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
July 16th, 1969. Launch of the historic Apollo 11 mission that captivated a nation. Now, nearly 5 decades later, the command module that bore Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, and Buzz Aldrin to the moon and back is on its latest adventure, a 2-year, 4-stop tour across America.
Being in the presence of the real artifact, there's nothing like it.
Catherine Halpern is the project director overseeing the Destination Moon traveling exhibition.
To share the original object with the public, for them to see it in their hometown, or to at least be able to travel an hour or two as opposed to having to come all the way to Washington. I think it's going to be incredibly inspiring for all sorts of different people.
National Air and Space Museum object conservator Lisa Young gave us an up-close look at the Columbia module before it left the nation's capital.
Do you think this could do the trip again in this state?
Probably not.
Young's team prepared not just the spacecraft, but a treasure trove of mission-flown objects, including the crew's medical kit, Aldrin's visor, and Collins's watch.
These are sensitive fabrics, they're Mylars, Velcro, things that we have today and we use every day, but in the 1960s that was not common. So we need to look at how they're degrading, stabilize them for the tour.
But taking Apollo 11 artifacts on the road isn't as simple as moving your family across country.
Think of coordinating a ballet. That's really what's involved here. Every step, every move is choreographed to make sure that the objects are safe and that the people working around them are safe as well.
If it's a complicated object, it has layers of packing.
Vicky Possoff, the tour's registrar, outlined the steps Smithsonian took to protect the Apollo 11 objects in transit.
In each box, there are internal fittings that are custom cut and shaped for that object.
Special linings keep unwanted vapors out. Silica gel packets help maintain optimal humidity levels. And custom cushioned feet shield objects from vibrations during transport. But moving the command module itself presents its own mammoth challenge.
It's an awkward, heavy object with fragile surfaces, so we can't wrap it like a traditional museum object.
Its upgraded stand can be lifted and repositioned without ever touching the spacecraft, and a special raincoat shields the module during outdoor transits.
Anything at that point could happen. You could have a bird fly by, you could have pollen in the air, all of those things that can get on the surfaces from our environment outside.
FedEx has partnered with Smithsonian to move the exhibition from one place to another. It's the last part of a big plan to keep the objects safe.
Making sure that these objects are around for future generations is really the most important part of our job. We want this to be another 50 years worth of time that they get to spend in the public eye.
Destination Moon, the Apollo 11 mission, is now on display at Texas's Space Center, Houston. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Julia Griffin in Chantilly, Virginia.
Online, we examine more artifacts in the exhibit, including Buzz Aldrin's helmet. That and more is on our website, pbs.org/newshour. It's a dream many have had, traveling into space and then even living there for some period of time. Just a small group of people on the planet have done it. That includes American astronaut Scott Kelly. Naturally, our Miles O'Brien had lots of questions about what happens to the human body and to the person once back on Earth. It's part of our weekly series about the leading edge of science.
A year in space is not for the faint of heart. Scott Kelly found that out aboard the International Space Station from March 2015 until March 2016. Now that he is firmly anchored on terra firma, he's out with a memoir, Endurance, and a sequel to the PBS film A Year in Space, aptly titled Beyond a Year in Space. Both book and film detail his slow, dizzy, painful return to the pull of gravity. Did you get the sense that you were hurting yourself?
So at times, yeah, especially when I got back and I didn't feel great, and your body's reacting to gravity. Something I think all astronauts are aware of. There's risk involved from being in space for long periods of time.
Astronauts returning from long-duration space flights routinely complain of being achy, confused, and delirious, flu-like symptoms. Their feet are tender from lack of use, and for the same reason, their bones are weaker too. 2 astronauts who spent long stints on the station broke their hips not long after landing. And for reasons not fully understood, their vision is impacted too, for some permanently.
Right now, what's your vision like? Is it the way it was? Has it gotten worse?
It's back to where it was before I flew. In space, my vision is affected because I think of the fluid shift. Your eyeball changes a little bit of shape when your head is more full of fluid. I think the fluid shifts experiment, however, was to look at kind of long-term effects and damage that occurs to the structures in our eyes.
Did you really volunteer to have an implant put in your head to measure this?
I actually did. I pushed for it, but I also know how conservative NASA could be.
So you knew they'd say no. It was easy to volunteer on this one.
I would have done it. I was a willing participant, but I knew the odds of them actually taking a drill to my skull was pretty unlikely.
NASA did take him up on another offer in the guinea pig category. He and his twin brother Mark, a former astronaut himself, agreed to be constantly tested before, during, and after the mission.
We actually switched the name tags.
Their nearly identical genomes offered scientists a way to control studies on how space travel affects the human body. Beyond a Year in Space takes us inside his reunion with his brother and his fiancée, Amiko Cowder.
Welcome home. Back to us.
Oh, that feels good. I've served the government for 30 years.
I'll tell.
And I feel very strongly about space. I think it's important. I would never rule out flying in space again, but I think it's probably unlikely.
And it gives us a glimpse into the non-glamorous side of these twin astronauts as lab rats.
We figured out I've spent 40 hours in that machine. I gotta go do some science in the bathroom. I'll be right back. Just like we've done it before. Man, that's a lot of tubes. They have more genetic information on my brother and I than they do on any other people. Ever.
You're going to lose a couple of pounds here.
Our atmosphere and magnetic field protect us from the high levels of radiation found in space. So exposure to radiation is one of the main concerns for astronauts headed to Mars. In his book, Kelly writes about closing his eyes at night and seeing flashes from radioactive ions.
You do take a healthy dose of radiation when you're up there, don't you?
So, it's something you think about, especially when you see those flashes and you realize, hey, that cosmic ray didn't just go through my eye. It went through my brain.
I forget what you say, it was several chest x-rays a day or something like that.
10, sometimes you hear 20. It